I've been reading about recently is just the fear that something like GDPR in Europe has now essentially enshrined the largest corporations as really the only people who can respond to all the requirements of GDPR. So I'd assume in the regulatory, in the legislative process, that's going to be a big concern to make sure we're not just enshrining a few large companies that comply with the government's mandates for cyber or privacy, but still allow, it's going to be this tension with innovation and smaller companies, I assume.
Yeah, and I'm by no means a privacy expert, but I, when I think about how any other sector has navigated federal legislation and federal policies, this is where American and these days global ingenuity and innovation comes into play. We absolutely, I believe, have through automation capabilities and technologies have the opportunity to take what's been codified into law and automate certain processes, leverage information sharing and collaboration. So every organization doesn't have to do it on its own. We always talk about it, the collaborative, democratizing access to information. There's big organizations figure it out. Let's extract that information, put it in some sort of frameworks and give access to it to the mid and small size organizations, so everyone can have access to this. And let's reinforce that with automation tools and capabilities, so we don't have these things become barriers of entry. But on the flip side, depending on the technology or the application that we're talking about, maybe there are some cases where we say, look, there is a minimum requirement to play in the space. If you're talking about developing technologies that go into missile defense systems, right? And we're talking about developing code for that, there absolutely should be a minimum standard of, supply chain, from a security perspective, DevSecOps. And if you can't meet that, maybe there isn't anything wrong with saying, unfortunately, you aren't at the level to be able to participate in this. And so I think we have to look at it from these multiple layers of national security, economic resiliency, and obviously fairness and creating opportunities for everybody. So it's not an easy solution, but I absolutely think it can be done. There's a really important role for legislation in this space if it's done responsibly and if you get the right folks involved. And I think that's where the private sector needs to just have more opportunities to engage and at a minimum educate how the policy could impact them if done in one way versus the other. It's we've talked a lot about what would benefit industry, but one of the things that it is what we do, and it's kind of what I've done my whole career, and I enjoy seeing the results of, is when passionate individuals come together, they can really accomplish and move the needle forward. And I think that's kind of this is such a big topic of national security and how do you combat Russia and China, right? And how do you start to do things? Sometimes it is just and this is not a plug for my organization. Do it wherever you can. But finding trusted organizations or trusted individuals and just compare notes and say, here's my challenge, here's what I'm trying to accomplish. How do you do it? Like I have limited resources. I only have a staff of 2. I have this much budget. If I'm trying to defend, we had somebody ask a question the other day of I'm trying to build my ransomware strategy, and I'm thinking of defending, investing in air gap.
That's a defensive strategy, right?
Yeah, it was a defense. Should I invest in air gap defense or this? And people responded, we're like, no, don't do that, do this. And I guarantee you, our member moved budget because of the responses they got, which were overwhelming, pointing them in one direction. That's how we can, as a community, come together, I think, and address some of these things. So that's what we're seeing.
So